cool.
first is called Screaming, Crying, Perfect Storms. I can make all the tables turn. Taylor Swift, mother. She gave us the process in her lyrics. Every time I got $1 for when I was called an overthinker, I would be a millionaire by now and I wouldn't have had to start passive income streams like this one.
But trust us, we're not overthinking girlies. In fact, I reckon others are perhaps just not thinking enough.
But don't worry, we've got you covered because we're here to think on your behalf on all the things that matter to you and to us with the girls who overthink
With Girls Who Think, the podcast. Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Girls Who Think, the podcast. And I'm Niharika.
And I'm Simran.
And today we're back with a super juicy topic, which we've been talking about for a ridiculously long time, which is how to handle rejection like an alpha female.
Wow.
So, Simran, as a romance fiction author, I'd love to know what is your take on this subject?
I love how you bring the romance author angle because I think in a way it always changes something when it comes to love relationships and
Absolutely.
romance. But I think rejection in general, I think, is a very difficult emotion for almost all human beings. And I think when we talk about rejection, we mostly think of it from a romantic angle, but it could be rejection from anywhere. It could be in your personal life or your professional life. And I think handling rejection well is such an important life skill to have because let's be honest, all of us have faced rejection. I don't think you can meet a single person out there who can say that they've never been rejected at anything in their life, right? So I think handling rejection well is such an important life skill. And I think it's super attractive. I really feel someone who can handle rejection well is a very attractive human being because deeply only people who really have a lot of self belief and who know their worth are able to handle rejection well. They're able to be graceful in times when they're rejected. And I think why it's super attractive is because now you've de-pedestalized the thing that you're being rejected from, and you've put yourself up on a pedestal by not having a deep emotional psychological reaction to it, right? And while always knowing your self-worth and not attaching your self-worth to the thing that you're being rejected from. So I think that's why this power play that happens when you handle rejection well is what makes it super attractive. Yeah.
No, that's very well said because I was just thinking about this. Growing up, everybody that I idolized, there was an unsaid belief which I now am conscious to, which I wasn't back then. And that belief was that, this is somebody that would have never been rejected, and that is what makes them this alpha persona, right? Man or woman. But growing up, I started to realize that nobody really has that kind of fate ever, right? But it's really more about how they seem to be in control of the narrative even when they're at the receiving end of rejection, and that treatment is what makes them alpha. And I feel like there's so much to learn from that because that's always going to be the truth. You're never going to be able to control your environment. There will always be situations where you're not necessarily the best fit, whether it's a relationship or whether it's a work situation. But the truth is that that should never diminish your idea of your own value as an individual, and that's a very hard pill to swallow. But once you kind of come into that energy, I feel like it really changes the game a lot. It really changes how you show up in those situations also, is what I feel. But how do you think, like in terms of just actual strategies, like if that's the topic that we're talking about, and if this was a podcast that I was probably listening to maybe a decade earlier, like what do you think are the real actual strategies of handling rejection while also maintaining your power in that narrative?
So my strategy boils down to this one simple statement, which is that rejection is God's protection. I think in the end, it's just God. You can make all the strategies in the world, but God will trump all the strategies that you make when He has to. And I think in general, humans have a very short line of sight. I can't see what's good for me 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I am making decisions from a very biased perspective. But I think God has a very big line of sight. God's vision is so much bigger, and I think it's that energy that knows what's best for you. So I think it's very much that relationship of that kid in a candy store that wants this candy, but the parent knows that it's not right for the kid. So I see rejection like that. And I think I've always used rejection or failure of any form in my life as an opportunity to really build my relationship with God. Because at the end of the day, I think God is your ultimate provider. No person, no business, no job, no relationship can really provide you that. All of these things are simply God's instruments to give you what He deems fit for you. In Hindi, we say Krishna ki Leela, right? Prabhu ki Leela. It's God's play, and we're all mere pawns in it. I think it's really important to build a relationship with the creator of this game instead of trying to build relationships with the pawns of this game. Um,
Very
that
well
is
said.
that is the ultimate strategy, if you're to ask me of a strategy.
Yeah, of course, I've gone through a phase where I would question the existence of a God, and I feel like now I'm certain of the power that faith holds. Like there is that belief in me is unshakable because I mean, as a kid, I always used to think that I'm God's favorite child, and I feel like it's just as an inherent belief, it's always stayed with me. So even if something's not working out, my belief in God is now having questioned it and having come to the conclusion that no, I think inherently I just believe that there is a God and there is that faith in me is so strong that the moment something doesn't work out, I know that it's divine intervention. I mean, it would be divine protection. I feel like God is like that parent, that it may be tough, but love it is.
Yeah.
So it is just probably redirection. It has to be redirection because if I am this loved and if something is not working out, then it's not meant to work out.
Yeah.
So that faith really gives me a lot of strength in the worst of times for sure, and this goes beyond just rejection per se, rejection from other people. It also things that are not working out, opportunities that may not be coming your way, or anything that is not going exactly the way you want it to. This is where I feel like faith plays a huge role, and that gives me a lot of strength. That helps me process rejection in a much better way. And I feel like the moment that I'm internally processing it better, I am externally also showing up better. Like I'm handling it better. The moment my energy is in place, like you can't fake these things. You can't have strategies in place or written in a book that okay, when this happens, here's how I'm going to act so that I don't look like I'm a failure.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
You
Like
can't do that.
internally, if you don't truly have a strong framework of how to process rejection, then you're always going to show up as a failure.
100%. And I completely agree with you. These are things that can really be seen through by anybody.
Yeah.
You can cut through that noise.
You can sniff it.
You can sniff it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very important to feel the right way internally because you can't fake it.
Yeah.
You have to feel like a success even when you're feeling like a failure. And that, I think, that alchemy and that magic is so important, and that only comes from faith. That
Yeah.
only comes from a place that is so mystical inside of you.
Yeah.
You don't know. There are no reasons to keep believing in it. All evidence is against it, but still you choose to believe. And that takes so much courage.
It takes a lot of
That takes
courage.
so much patience. That takes so much power. I think that takes mostly all the reserves that you have inside of you. And then you have to again sit and build your faith and, replenish those reserves, so
Yeah.
to say. And I think that's a very difficult process, and anybody who does that, I think, really knows what I'm talking about and really knows how hard it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you have reason in front of you, then it is fact. Then it is without question. You don't have tangible reasons, but you choose to believe, then that is faith, right? And faith in itself is a very powerful tool for anybody to have.
Faith can move mountains.
Faith can move mountains. So yeah, so that's faith is one, of course.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think I have a process when it comes to rejection.
Trust you to have a process to handle rejection.
Yes, there's
Please tell
a
me.
3-step
Wow,
process.
Simran. That's not crazy at all. It's just mad genius.
It's a 3-step process, precisely. First is called screaming, crying, perfect storms. I can make all the tables turn. Taylor Swift, mother, she gave us the process in her lyrics. So, yeah, I mean, my first step is to have a proper emotional breakdown, cry it out, have the screaming session, have the storm, let it pass through you. Because I think that's so important. I mean, you can't just, you have to process your emotions, you have to channelize the pain, right? Ultimately, anything like rejection, personal or professional, is causing you a lot of pain, right? Now, what do you do with your pain is your question. So, first is to channel it out of your system. So, I'm a big fan of a proper nervous breakdown. It can do wonders for a girl.
A big
Uh,
fan of a proper nervous breakdown.
Not crazy at all, guys. Sorry. Not
Yeah.
sorry, actually. So yeah, that's first step. I think just try it out, feel all your feelings, have a breakdown if you have to. Just give yourself that time to grieve. It's
Yeah.
super important. And then the second step is pick after yourself, baby. I mean, now that it's done, now that you've cried and you've grieved, then it's time to clean the emotional gunk that's around you. And it's hard, but you have to get
Yeah.
up, you have to pick up yourself, you have to pick up after yourself. And I think that's usually the hardest part for most people, to just get out of that zone of self pity and just this really bad space where I think these negative emotions and negative feelings are also so addictive, wherein you just want to kind of be in that zone because it just feels more comfortable. And I think this is for a lot of mental illnesses as well. Depression feels very comforting and very addictive to people who are in it. So you just don't have the motivation and energy enough to get out of it and to step out of it. So I think that is usually the hardest step. And that is where, again, I would circle it back to faith, something like faith, something having a strong belief in a higher power, that you know something good is still around the corner and this is in your favor, really helps to get you motivated, to get you out of bed the next day and still give your best shot at life or at that opportunity or that thing that you're trying really hard for. So, yeah, that's when you pick up yourself by having faith and by believing in yourself, something inside of you and something outside of you, a higher power. And then the third step is most importantly learning. I think life is a learning curve. And anything that happens in your life, anything especially that did not work out in your life, is an opportunity to learn from, is an opportunity to step back, reflect, and see why it did not work for you. Are you still asking for the wrong things from God? Are you still having certain blockages that are stopping you from receiving that gift, right? Oftentimes, I think we subconsciously self sabotage because we're not ready for that thing in our lives,
Yeah.
right? We're not mentally, emotionally, spiritually aligned to receive the blessing that we're asking for. We need to build those skills, we need to build those reserves in ourselves, and we need to build the person who can handle the opportunity, the gift, the blessing that we're asking for. So we've not done that work, or you know, sometimes it's just we're asking for the wrong things.
Yeah.
So we really need to step back and assess, analyze, understand what really went wrong. And then often it's going back to the drawing board and starting from scratch. But that is life. We keep doing that until
Yeah.
one day we die. So I don't know what's the point of it all, also. But yeah, these are the exact existential thoughts and interventions that you have to
Yeah.
power through
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in this process, and you have to convince yourself that it is worth it, even when there are going to be multiple moments. I swear on God, I swear on my entire life, there's going to be multiple moments where you're going to feel like, is it all worth it? Like,
Yeah.
why am I going through this pain? What is the point of it all? But I think you have to remind yourself that it is for a reason,
Yeah.
and at some point, it's going to feel worth it. And I think there are moments in everyone's life when certain things happen, and there's these little glimmers of pleasure, joy, not pleasure, these little glimmers of joy and hope, which make you realize that it was worth it for this. All of that pain, all of that experience, all that heartbreak, failure, journey was for this particular moment. And it may be very short lived, that's the sad bit. But I think we have to endure it for those moments in life.
Wow, well said. I personally feel that one thing that helps me is that I love life so much. Like there is so much I want to do that no one thing can kind of take up center stage.
I love
Because
that
like
for
I feel like I have
you.
a lot of things on my canvas that I really, really, truly love.
I
Okay.
need a master class on this.
No, but it's just like I just really enjoy it. Like I just really enjoy living life. I don't know how crazy this sounds, but
This sounds
um,
beautiful.
okay, I'm glad then. But what that does is I feel like there are just so many elements at all times that if something is not working out, I have so many other pillars to lean on. And I feel like I end up leaning more heavily on these other pillars when one thing is not working out. But I feel like this kind of variety of interests and of things that kind of populate my world and my life, like they really help me stay very balanced when it comes to every individual element, because no one thing can really end up making me off balance, in that sense. So I feel like really working on a lot of these elements together makes a very holistic, very wholesome life. So that is something that definitely helps me tide through it. Which brings me to my next concept of like fail fast. I just feel like we've experienced that so much even with our book, and it's not just necessarily pertaining to relationships, but there is just so much ground to cover. And while rejection might be heartbreaking in the moment, like I definitely have learned this the hard way, to really allow yourself to process it also. Like as you rightly mentioned, you do go through stages of grief. While it may vary in intensity, I mean, you do have to process it, because I think earlier on in my 20s I used to block it off, and that was a very helpful coping mechanism in the moment. But in the longer run, I think it had devastating effects, because that same pain would kind of keep resurfacing at times where you would not expect it. So it was very triggering. Like it would kind of live in your life as like alive triggers, and if you've not processed it. So processing it is of course extremely important. And but for me, that processing used to kind of go on for an indefinite amount of period, like an unhealthy amount of period. So what I do now is kind of, I consciously, if there's anything that disappoints me, even, I allow myself like 3 days to be miserable. Like 3 days I'll be miserable. I'll allow myself to be absolutely my worst, and then not a second longer. Like, cry if you have to, scream if you have to, eat ice cream
Spoken
if you
like an
want to.
alpha woman, not a second longer.
Yeah, not a second longer. Because again, like, I mean, there's so much to get done. Like, how do you move on to that? So you just gotta fail fast. So I feel like that failing fast principle has really stayed with me, and that truly helps. And lastly, from a mindset perspective, there was this book by Brené Brown called Daring Greatly, which had this line, which was that if we deny our stories, they define us. And if we own our stories, we get to write the ending. So I
Wow.
feel like just from a perspective mindset shift, it really helps, because the whole point of this alpha persona is not really to deny the experience of getting rejected. It's really to own it, and then to kind of weave the narrative around it in a way where you kind of accept it and you get to write what the ending of that story has been. And I feel like that again puts you in a position of controlling
Power.
and of power. And I feel like that's what it comes down to at the end
Yeah,
of the day.
yeah, yeah. I love that. And I think I particularly loved when you said that you try to fill your life with variety so that not one thing takes center stage. And I think this is a lesson I have learned the hard way, because I am usually a person who just has this one thing on her mind in one phase of her life, and that's just that one goal. And then I have blinders on. I cannot see left, right. I cannot. I can only see this one thing, and to the point that it becomes obsessive. I become very obsessive and really controlling with, certain things that I really want in a particular phase of my life. It could be a college I wanted to get into, a job I wanted to get into, a relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then I let that one thing define my entire life. And I think I've learned to eventually, after failing, after rejections, after all this life experience, I have learned to not put all your eggs in one basket. and I've learned to kind of allocate different parts of your energy to different parts of your life.
Yeah.
So that you have a full platter at all times, so that if there's one thing that's not working out for you, you still have those three, four other things that are working out for you
Yeah.
at all times. And it's just way more powerful. It
Yeah.
just puts you, as we said again, in a place of abundance and power instead of a place of lack and instead of a place of self pity.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
by no means, I mean, do I want to come across as somebody who handles rejection like an alpha at all times. I mean, these are just tips and tricks or thought processes that I have picked up because it's been inspiring for me and it's helped me tremendously when I needed it to. But of course, rejection is always tough for everybody. I mean, the whole idea is not that it isn't tough. The idea is just that while it may be tough, it is not the end of me. You know, I feel like that ultimately has got to be the mindset because there, I mean, life is going to have its highs and lows. The expectation that it's not going to hurt is unrealistic.
Yeah.
That's never the point. But it's
Yeah.
just that, yeah, I mean, your attitude is always going to be, you know, the only thing that you
Yeah.
can really exert any control over.
Yeah, and I think I also want to talk about an alpha woman here. While again, we like to associate characteristics of ambition, strong mindedness, and stuff like that when it comes to an alpha woman. We have to also realize ultimately the humanness of a person, right? Be it an alpha man or a beta man or an alpha woman or a beta woman. I think rejection is really hard on everyone, and as an alpha person, I think the only difference is that you continue to have a sense of self confidence and a sense of self worth, that nothing in your life can kind of shake that self belief in a long run. Nothing not happening for you can shake your confidence in life in the long run. That's really what the true meaning of alpha in this sense would be. I
Yeah,
think
I agree.
I also wanna talk about this one story, particularly. There's this book called The Midnight Library,
I
and
read it, I love
you've
it.
read it.
Matt
And
Haig.
I think when I was thinking about this topic, I couldn't help but think about that book because oftentimes as young people we have this habit of obsessing over a choice and thinking about how our life would have played out if we
Yeah.
weren't rejected from this opportunity and this would have happened for us. But here in this book, the main character gets to visit a library between life and death, and each and every book in that library shows her the story of her life, how it would have played out had she made that choice. So when she's living these parallel realities and alternate life paths, she realizes that the one that she was living in her real life was the best one, was the happiest one, if not the best one. So really, the things that are not working for us are the things that are really working for us. And that's what that book teaches us, that rejection is God's protection. We really don't know oftentimes what is right for us and what's going to be truly right for us in the long run, what's going to make us happier and more peaceful. So,
Yeah.
yeah, on that note, I think let's call it a wrap for this podcast episode. Rejection is God's protection. Niharika, any last thoughts?
No, I'd love to hear from the listeners actually what they think about the subject because this is something where everybody has such an individual process that there isn't, you know, one right way of doing
Yeah.
it. But of course, I'd love to know what you guys think and let us know in the comments. And meanwhile, we'll be back for another episode. But this is me signing off, Niharika.
And Simran.
And
And
this
this
is
is
Girls Who Think, the podcast.